that. Maybe you know my whole history. Maybe you know more about me than I do. But yeah, I volunteered for the Air Force in World War II and flew bombing missions over Europe. I did it because it was a good war. It was the right war. It was a just war. It was, well, after I got out of the war, I began to think sometimes, and research and so on, and go back over things and learn about Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Because when the bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, and I had just finished my missions in Europe and was going to go to the Pacific to continue dropping bombs, and a bomb was dropped on Hiroshima and the war ended soon after, wow, that's great. I welcomed it. Did I really know what happened when that bomb was dropped on Hiroshima? Did I know what happened to those people? Did I have any idea what that meant to those hundreds of thousands of people, of men, women, and children? No, I did not. When I began to think about that, and then began to think about the people under my bombs, whom I hadn't thought about, I never saw them. Flying 30,000 feet, you don't see anybody, just drop bombs. You know, warfare today is a very antiseptic thing. You know, people blithely, they send Predator missiles, even, well, without any pilots at all, right? You know, that's easy. We'll just kill people, and we won't even take any chances of having anybody shut down. 3 months before Nagasaki, we sent planes over Tokyo to firebomb Tokyo, and 100,000 people were killed in one night in the bombing of Tokyo. I mean, later when I visited Japan and I talked to people there, and later when I visited Hiroshima and I met with people who were survivors of Hiroshima, and you should have seen them, well, people without legs and arms and blind and so on. When I began to see what that, meant, that war, the 50 million dead in the war, and well, what do you say? Well, we defeated fascism. Did we? Did we, really? That's another thing, you know. So you find that a Revolutionary War, well, not everything turned out well after the Revolutionary War. Not everything turned out really that great after, and certainly not to warrant that many people killed. And what about World War II? 50 million people dead, and oh, sure, you got rid of Hitler, you got rid of the Japanese military machine and Mussolini, but did you get rid of fascism in the world? Did you get rid of militarism? Did you get rid of racism? Did you get rid of war? We've had war after war after war. What did those 50 million people die for? We have to rethink this question of war and come to the conclusion. I think the guy who's monitoring this has fallen asleep. And believe me, I am not going to wake him. What you have to come to the conclusion, as I have, war cannot be accepted, no matter what. No matter what. War, yeah. You know, no matter what the reasons given, the excuse given, liberty, democracy, this, that, you know, no, war is by definition the indiscriminate killing of huge numbers of people for ends which are uncertain. If you think about means and ends, you think about that ethical proposition and apply it to war, the means are horrible, certainly. The end is uncertain. That alone should make you hesitate. And then, of course, people always ask the question, this question has always been asked of me, and so I'm going to preempt your asking it, even in your head. Yeah, but what else were we to do? This is what people ask. What else are we to do about this, about that, about independence from England, about slavery? And, yeah. By the way, an interesting thing about slavery, John Brown wanted to free the slaves. This is a year before the Civil War, right? He tries to start, wasn't very good at it, but he tried to start a slave insurrection, hoping that would, you know, it would spread and spread and spread. Maybe they'd end slavery that way. He's executed by the government of the United States and the state of Virginia for using such violence. The next year, they start a war which ends up with 600,000 dead, and everybody is celebrating that slavery is ended in that way. Well, yeah, just one point I want to make. This is a question that says, what else would you do? They say, what else? Yeah, but Hitler, you had to do something. Something about Hitler. I agree, you had to do something about all these things. You have to do something about winning independence if you're oppressed. You have to do something about slavery if there's slavery. You have to do something about fascism. You have to do something about all these things. But you don't have to do war. Yeah. You have to, if we have any brains, I don't know if we do, but we are supposed to be smart. We are smart in so many ways. Surely we should be able to understand that in between war and passivity, there are 1,000 possibilities, you see. But it's curious that once a historical event has taken place a certain way, that is, once history has played itself out in a certain way, you know, Hitler invades Czechoslovakia, Poland, we go to war lasts a number of years, the war is over. Once it has played out in a certain way, fascism is over. Once it's played out that way, it becomes very hard to imagine that you could have achieved that result some other way. You know, it's because when something has happened in history, it takes on a certain air of inevitability. This is the only way it could have happened. No. No. And you see so many instances in history where surprising things take place that you wouldn't have imagined. I mean, if the African National Congress had decided on a bloody war of rebellion against the apartheid system, well, that might be justified. End apartheid? Yes. There would be a war. They'd end apartheid. Maybe 1 million people would be killed, mostly black people. And if it happened that way, then you would say, well, I guess it was the only way it could have been done. Apartheid ended because the African National Congress decided, no, we don't want that. We're going to do it another way. We're not going to be passive. We're going to fight back in various ways. We're going to have strikes. We're going to have all sorts of things. We're going to have economic pressure. We're going to do all sorts of things to bring down this regime little by little, to erode its power. Yeah, but we're not going to have a bloody war in which we are going to be the victims, mostly. Anyway, finally, you're saved. Say, well, you get my point, right? That's all I have to say.